Good evening and welcome to another Easter special of the Magpie Circle podcast. Two games to check out this evening, not the one. Home to Swindon on Saturday. We complete a round robin trip that's taken us a best part of 5 years in a perverse way. Quite looking forward to going to Swindon on Friday and going back again as a league club after a pretty long break. Think not too many of us will forget our sad exit a few years ago. Then MK Dons on Easter Monday. I can already feel the script being written. Notts County have never lost in their league history ever. 6 consecutive home league games. We have currently equalled the worst ever record with 5 consecutive home games. That was set by John Sheridan. And of course, after John did that, he got the sack. So I appreciate things, emotions are running a little bit high. As always on this show, we want to be respectful. We want to be balanced. Don't just want knee-jerk reactions, but people to try and kind of explain their thoughts and views. There's a reason. There's a reason why players' families tune into this show every week. Macca Langstaff's dad, Kedwin Scott's dad. I know the brothers tune in occasionally. And the reason for that is hopefully we can give you some balanced little bit of insight and a chance to sort of get it out of your system a little bit. Here's one for you to think about, and we'll discuss it during the show. For me, a minimum of one of 3 of the following things have to change in the summer, or I think we have a long, hard season against us, and I would be more worried about relegation than going up. Here's the 3 things. Tell us what you think, where you apportion responsibility, what you think needs to be changed. 1, the metrics that are applied by the recruitment committee and the brothers, with particular reference to signing defensive players. Do we need to sign first and foremost defenders and ability to head the ball, rather than there appears to be quite a heavy weighting on the ability to pass the ball? That would be point 1. Point 2. By the club's own admission, Richard Montague is leads on club's recruitment. Do you think we need to change that committee, change the head of who leads on recruitment? And 3, clearly and obviously, do you think we need a new head coach? Your thoughts on those 3. I'll let you ponder that. We'll read a few out in a minute. Stell, I caught as I was driving out of Sneinton. The car was still there, thankfully. As I was driving out of Sneinton on Saturday, I caught a few of your comments as you were leaving. I think it would be fair to say you're quite concerned and quite worried about the club's current plight, correct?
Well, absolutely, yeah. And I'm taking that over 4 months, very nearly 4 months since the end of November when sort of the downturn started. Yeah, it's very difficult, and I know everybody wants to try and solve it with a thing like you've just mentioned 3 aspects there. Everybody wants to find a solution. What is it? It's and the blame game comes into it, and it's the finger pointing starts happening. Well, it's him, or it's that, or it's them, or whatever. The reality is, it really is a mystery. I've had no end of people who obviously loads connected with Notts, but those that aren't connected with Notts that watch from afar. And the amount of people that say, "What's happened to Notts? What's happened to them this season?" And I'm finding it increasingly difficult to give them an answer because it's so hard to actually pick apart what's actually gone on from being top of the table, sort of mid to the end of November, to being almost playing dead rubbers, if you like, with half a dozen games or 7 games to go. Now I know mathematically we get it's still, but yeah, we're not going to even pull that thread. But yeah, trying to explain it. And if there was one, I mean, the most obvious glaring thing is the number of goals we concede, obviously. So that is one part of it. a big part of it. But we were still conceding goals when we were top of the table. We were conceding goals when we were, when we were top, when we were winning games, when we were flying high. So absolutely, what has changed since then across the whole pitch? We're scoring goals, but we don't look quite as threatening. Confidence has drained. Of course, you can say that individual performances have dropped. There's been a change of head coach. Maybe the response to that hasn't been what's been desired. But there's a load of factors that you put into it. But I think for me, the biggest frustration, and I'm talking from a footballing aspect of it, is not the number of goals that we concede, it's the manner of the goals that we concede. And I say time and time again, we don't ask other teams to work particularly hard to score against us. We're a nice team, at risk of being a nice team to play against. We still carry that threat going forward, but it doesn't seem as potent as it was. And again, that can come down to a number of things. But we are so, I say, naive, nice, whatever you want to call it, at conceding goals, and that's why we sort of get what we get. But it's a massive, it's a problem, and it's frustrating. And like everybody, when it happens, it's difficult to change. It's difficult to change that momentum. We've spoken about that before, but it is a real conundrum as to how you go about solving this problem. You've alluded to some possible reasons there, because if it was as simple as just making one change, then it would have been done. But as ever with football and elite sport, anything like that, it's a complex problem. It's a complex issue that isn't just solved by, we just signed two better defenders. That's it, problem solved. It isn't as simple as that, because you've got the whole balance of the team and the squad and everything to think about. So, look, yeah, I'm massively frustrated and massively disappointed. I've got to be honest, because I didn't see this coming. As I've said on here, I didn't see us going 5 games without a win. That's how good I thought the players were. But I've been proved wrong, and and not for the first time, but I've got to hold my hands up and say, yeah, I've been disappointed with them over the last 3-4 months. I think they'll be disappointed. Don't be under any illusion that the players don't care. Even people who will be calling for Stuart Maynard to go, I think even people would say that the players are playing for him. They're trying. They're doing what they can. I don't think, I say I'm not all over social media. I don't think people can label that they're not trying, that there's a lack of effort. But like I say, can you fault players if you're reaching a ceiling of ability? Well, I don't know as if you can fault them too much, but you have to go, right, we've got to learn from this, and some big, tough decisions have got to be made, if not already, but certainly in the summer.
Okay, very good opening comments as always, Stel. Let's get through a few of the many comments from the flock. Paul's is optimistic about the trip to Swindon. I think we will beat Swindon on Friday and then hopefully beat MK. Come on, you pies. Mark Bradley, Swindon should be a goal fest. They defend about as well as we do. Well, we've had a 5-5 earlier this season at Grimsby. 3-4 Notts win. Crowley, Jatta and 2 from Langstaff, says Mark. Evening from Dave Woolley. David Dawes heard Stuart's match report or interview after Salford. I must have been watching a different match. Also, can someone tell me why we're getting a free kick near the halfway line? Why do we pass it back to our goalkeeper? I want to also, I've had this conversation with Stel, just talk to you a little bit about possession stats. If anyone knows how possession stats are computed and those percentages, just let me know, because when I found out, I was very surprised. And I think Stel was when I mentioned it to him as well. So if anyone knows how possession stats are measured, yeah, I don't think many of you will, but let's see. What else have we got? Jurgen Halligan, looking at Stuart's stats, has a worse record now than Jamie Fullerton. Ian Cooksey disagrees. Stuart is being badly let down by senior players. Evening from PJ Defiance. Gazali, who's always relied upon to come up with a little quip or two. I see Forest have appealed the 4-point deduction. Can we appeal Luke Williams leaving for Swansea? Personally, I think the Notts fans on Saturday were past caring whether to boo or support the lads. Evening from John Parnham. From Kay, regular Rich Hawksworth. I think we all know now that it is all about next season and whether we can sign what we need in the summer. Ian G, if we lose against MK Dons, first time ever, lost 6 home games on the bounce. Sobering thought and tells you where we are at the moment. Evening from John Gregory. Jambo says, evening all, as bad as we have been recently, once it gets to the point where players' partners are getting involved, it's very hard to come back from. I've been critical of Kyle recently, but he's only human. Yeah, look, we'll deal with this now. I don't want to waste any more time on it. Unfortunately, you lose a few games, social media, toxic combination, abuse gets personal, players' families get involved, and things get said. Personally, I think players and their families have every right to have a dig back at people who are giving them abuse. Unfortunately, people that dish abuse out on social media normally have the thinnest skin of anybody. So let's just put that one to bed. It shouldn't happen. Sadly, it's a reflection of life at the minute. You lose football games. Everyone fragments and says things on social media they wouldn't dare say to anyone to their face. That one's over and done with. No more comments on that one, please. Peter Cowlishaw, evening from Ballymena, hoping for some positivity to take into Saturday. Kay says, on a positive, Dean Yates looked well in the navvy before the game. If only we had a defender like him. Royston makes a point. We're not at this stage. It is, and I've said this before at the back of my mind, if the few percent of our fan base causing all the toxicity towards the club carries on, I can see the brothers selling up. Look, the brothers are level-headed, but equally no one likes criticism. Let's break it off there. There's plenty more to have a go at. I'll tell you what, we'll do the possession one, Stel. I can't see too many people at the minute seem to know how you work out possession. Right, because, and the reason I mention this is because it gets talked about so much with Notts in terms of the balance of possession, 70 to 80%. So I actually was talking with Martin Tyler, the ex Sky Sports commentator, who was Woking assistant manager when we played him a year or two ago. I'm going back 5 or 6 years ago, and we were talking about, and he said to me, do you know how they work possession out? So probably like most people, I thought it would be based 45 minutes, and then you count the time that you hold possession. So one team might have it for 28 minutes, the other team might have it for 17 minutes, and then you work out the percentage. You don't. Time duration doesn't come into it. It's all to do with completed passes. So if you see Notts in our own half putting 10 passes together, then the ball goes long, we lose it. And then they hit the ball long, one header, shoot, score, whatever it is, goes wide. They've had one completed pass to our 10. So therefore, Notts have had 90% possession. The opposition have had 10. So it's all about completed passes. So it's not the amount of time that you hold on to the ball, your number of completed passes compared to the opposition's. And like so many of these things, Stel, it's like when we discussed XG, and it is a computer-based algorithm, and we said before, Messi, you, me, 12-yard chance, edge of the box. You'd have thought Messi and you would have a marginally better XG. Being polite there to you, Stel, one of the all-time top 10 goal scorers. No, XG for all three of us, God forbid I ever got in a Notts County shirt, would be exactly the same, because it is the opportunity, not the person taking it. And so for me, it kind of explains a little bit when you see all these possession stats that we've dominated, I think, for every single game other than Crawley. But then when you kind of see how it's worked out, you can see how it can be a little bit misleading.
Yeah, I mean, look, you explained that to me the other week on the golf course, and I was sort of about as bothered about it then as I am now, as I always have been, to be honest. Look, when possession stats win you a game, then I'll take more notice of it. But it's look, I think the thing is with stats, and we've had this conversation quite a lot, and obviously, with not being a data-based or data sort of an analytic run team and club, that it becomes a talking point. Now, whenever you talk about stats, especially us dinosaurs who came from before stats were really a thing, I don't want to be the person that is the old dinosaur that no, it didn't happen in our day, so forget about it, it's rubbish. So every time you talk about it, or I talk about it, I don't want to be seen to be having a go at it, going, it's rubbish. It's not rubbish. It's a tool that can help you and tell you things, or dive down and tell you things about how your team are playing, who's doing what, give you your analysis. But stats on their own, possession stats, passing stats, running stats, they're only an indicator. They're only an indicator. They go with what you see with your eyes. And one thing, I think Stuart he'd be well not to trot out the sort of stat he said on Saturday that no team against Salford had 350 passes since Carl Robinson had been in charge, and when you've just lost your fifth game at home on the trot, nobody gives a monkeys, and rightly or wrongly, nobody that is not going to wash with people. So I would advise anybody against coming out with that sort of stuff, but you have to take stats at what they want. You're not going to go, oh no, I don't believe in it. I don't believe in how they work it out. I don't believe in this. I don't believe in XG. I don't believe in that. And you go, well, it's not. It is part of the game. It's part of the analysis, and it's part of the tools. And I said before, and I'll say again, if you've got the analysis, you've got that data, why wouldn't you use it? Like anything, it's how you interpret the data. It's what matters. What is meaningful data, and what is just data, just facts. It's facts of what's happened in the past. So look, the possession stats, I never have been too worried about it. What I would say, the possession stats, and I've said a few times this season, is us having 60%, 70% possession in some games means that we only, in theory, to use a Luke Williams phrase, we don't want to keep going back to Luke Williams, he's gone, that era's gone, is you're in control of the game when you've got the ball. That's why all these coaches who do all these coaching badges, that's why the theory of possession is there. It's why the top teams play passing football. When you've got the ball, you're in control of the game. Your opposition can't score, and you've got a chance to score because you've got it. And that's it in very basic terms. That's what it is. Now, the issue I have with when they trot out them stats is that, if we've got it 60% of the time, we're only defending 40% of the time. So in theory, we should be creating more chances. So this is where you use the stats. It's okay, we've got all them passes, all that possession. What's it leading to? And they talk about box entries, don't they? Final third entries, and XG is chances or whatever you. But you've got a deep dive. You can never take one stat in isolation or two, because you can make them. You could cherry pick whatever you wanted. You could get beat 5-0 in a game, and some of the stats will come out and go, well, look at that. That looks all right. But everything else tells you it was a horror show. So, look, you've got to use stats in context, I think, is a good way of putting it. If you start seeing, we'll start cherry picking stats, it's taking it out of the context of things. And when you've lost a game, when you've lost 5 home games on the spin, no stat anybody could trot out is going to soften the blow of that.
Yeah. I'll play devil's advocate, Stel. Your team have got 82% possession. My team, after half an hour, are 2-0 up. Are you in control of the game with 80% possession?
No, I'm in control of 82% of the game, and I've been terrible in the other 18%. But that's it. But that's exactly it.
I'm being facetious.
No. But you're absolutely right. With all the stats, with everything, the game hasn't changed fundamentally from day dot to now. It's the only stat that really matters is the scoreline, and all the rest of it is an enabler, if you like, to back up the way your team wants to play, your philosophy, as they can call it, your style of football, whatever you want to call it. The stats can be utilised to your advantage. What we never talk about is, and what might be a bit more relevant coming towards the end of the season, is things like analysing stats of knots. Obviously, we're going to be in League Two next season, barring some sort of unless we can appeal the last 4 months of results. Yeah, we're going to be in League Two. So then you analyse, okay, who's been successful in League Two? What have they done? How's their team built up? You know, what is the average age? What is the average size? You know, what formations? And then you can analyse what possession stats do they have? What running stats do they have? What box entries do they have? What defensive duels do they win? And everything like that. You can analyse that. Go right. That's been successful in League Two. So maybe we just need to learn a little bit off that. You know, that's. It goes without saying. We've got a way of playing, a style of playing that I am never, ever going to advocate to go, no, chuck it out, it doesn't work. It's all about refinement, improving. So you take the basics of it and going, right, we want to play. Look, we've got, as much as we're all frustrated with the season as it is at the minute and how it has been the last 3 months, we've scored no end of goals. We are, I think, decent to watch. Probably more decent for a neutral at the minute than actually Notts fans, but there's goals in the games. It's exciting to watch. Notts County Football Club PLC is a business, not limited, but they're a business. They've got to get bums on seats. They've got to attract sponsorship. They've got to bring money in. So the way to do it, I've got no problem with. It's by playing attractive, passing football that hopefully attracts the crowds. But you've also got to ally that with winning football. You've not got to go, it's one or the other. And I would go back to, say, Kevin Nolan sort of football. He nearly got us up out of League Two, took us to the playoffs.
Yeah.
But the football was nowhere near as attractive to watch, nowhere near as entertaining to watch. But if we'd have had success, it would have been great to watch. So you've got to marry the two. And I think that's where data is always learning. It can always, be improved upon and whatever. And I think that's the big test, is to look at, right, where have we gone wrong in terms of everything, in terms of where not where we've gone wrong, where can we improve? Okay, have we been a little bit naive in this playing football, that we want to do? Let's have a look at, I think probably the top three are going to be the top three that go up at the minute in League Two. So let's have a look at what they've done. Let's have a look at teams in the playoffs. How are they set up? What's their makeup like? Some teams haven't scored anywhere near the goals we've got, but they've obviously not conceded anywhere near the goals we have. So it's finding that balance. It's not easy. And again, I go back to when we played Mansfield, and you think, do you know what? That is a team that has been sort of honed and refined with money, not cheaply, over 3, 4, 5 years that it's taken them to actually, where I think they will make that step up this year. It is not easy. The higher the levels you get to, it is not easy. And then that takes me back to, like I say, players reaching sort of maybe levels, ceilings of their ability and not getting found out. Nobody's committed a crime. Nobody's done anything wrong. It's just the performance levels haven't been good enough. But, like I say, we could debate that forever and a day, but I've waffled on long enough, Paul. I'll let you come back in. I need a drink.
No, we'll give the flock some of the opinions from our flock, particularly in relation to the last few games, and we'll bring it back to recent matches. Jambo says, I honestly thought and hoped that Stewart had turned the corner against Bradford. Clearly not. Salford were there for the taking, but we didn't capitalise on it and let them tickle our bellies. Neil Pike, was it asking too much for someone who has only known part-time football, either as a player or manager, to suddenly take a full-time post at a relatively big club with reasonable ambitions. Derek Flowers, we knew the defence wasn't great in the National League and probably not good enough for League Two. The defensive issues weren't addressed in the close season nor January. Gary Phillips said Richard Montague has largely done a great job, although we are so heavily weighted with technical but physically weaker players, we must begin to balance it out. Lippy Jane, Robertson and Macari were both brilliant on Saturday. John Parr, every week we hear stats say this and that, but reality is it's the score at full time is the most important one. Bob H. Macari, the only defender I would like to see at the start of next season. Pythagorean, evening all. My 57th anniversary of watching my first Notts game, says Pythagorean. Too many failures of winning first headers on Saturday. We look scared of balls in the air. Joe Crabtree, under Richard Montague's leadership, we've signed some wonderful attacking players and stopped the cycle of releasing en masse at the end of every season. Defensive recruitment needs to be prioritised. Ian G, we need to change our strategy to allow the head coach, whoever that may be, he puts in brackets, to be more influential in the recruitment process. Going forward, this will allow a wider scope of candidates for the head coach. I think that's a very good point, Ian. And we'll pick up on that later, but I think you've got to sort of kind of one of the nubs of the issue here. PJ Defiance, just need a central defender in the mould of Gary Strodder, Sean Murphy, Matt Redmile and Ian Richardson. Gary Phillips, a coach that continuously plays players out of position when others could play, is not a genius tactician when we are losing. Even our best players aren't as good when played out of position. Paul Willits, echoing one of the points you were making, Stel. Mansfield took their time to get to grips with this league. They flirted with the bottom places during their time in League Two. It is disappointing, but at least we are not going to file. Dave Hartshawn, I understand the theory behind the head coach appointment, but I feel the recruitment has failed us for League Two. Jurgen Halligan, Swindon only won 1 in 10, and let's make sure it's 1 in 11, eh? Joe Crabtree, home games since the Walsall fixture have been so frustrating. Some nice football, but so many hopeful punts into our box have resulted in goals. Alex Young quoting the off-quoted Matty Palmer stat with and without him. Paul, it's boring to watch so much backwards football, sideways football. Adds manager consistently changing tactics and playing players out of position or in multiple positions is not helping. That kind of pick up from we were both at Bradford, Stel, seems a long time ago now, Bradford, and Saturday. And kind of we all hope, don't we? You know, I got pelters last week. You win at Bradford, you're 6 points off the playoffs with a home game to come. Your point about Crawley being the form team, they're now in the playoffs. They're now in the playoff spots. Were you surprised at all? Because a lot of fans kind of say, we won, we played really well, yet we started at home lacking in any real momentum and also changing perhaps more players and positions than you might have expected. So in the terms of Bradford, you had Sam Slocum brought in for Luca Ashby-Hammond. Clearly, Aaron Naman was an enforced change, but you kind of moved Jody Jones over the other side, dropped someone else in over there. Were you, I mean, are you surprised with the number of changes or not? Or is that kind of now the modern game? Historically, you win a game, you keep the shirt. Yeah? Thoughts?
Yeah. Look, I get what people, people who've got a sort of a point about that, and I accept that completely. All I try to do is try and understand the rationale behind the decisions that are made.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can't. Sometimes I can't. Saturdays, well, I don't think were too difficult to understand, to be honest. Luca Ashby-Hammond could obviously say, look, I kept a clean sheet against Bradford, so why have I been dropped? But which he has done. Now, that is the one that I could say, you could say is a contentious point. But then again, the last game Sam Slocum played, he had an absolute worldie down at Crawley where, but for him, we'd have been beat 5, 6, maybe 7. So, look, he has to make a call. Sam Slocum was the number one. He got a little knock, but when he was fit again, he brought him back into the team. Look, we've lost the game, so in hindsight, people will go, well, should have stuck with Ashby-Hammond. That's easy to say in hindsight, but I've not really got too much of a problem with that because Sam Slocum's last game, he was brilliant. The Aaron the Man one obviously was ill, so he couldn't play. So then you look at what can you do? What can you do as a manager? You leave Jody on the left hand side as left wing back. Adam Chickson can't do the right wing back role, but that would mean then do you put Lewis McCarry out as a right wing back and then play Jaden Warner, Carl Cameron, maybe Adam Chickson? That would have been one option. Again, with hindsight, we lost the game, so that obviously would have been a better option. Whatever you come up with as an option after a game, it always wins as well, doesn't it? By the way, everyone you bring in would have had a great game and would have been the difference, and we would have won the game. Ideally, I thought Jody was. I thought we were all right in the first half, weren't we? But Jody was the only one that was going to make anything happen. I think he's been sort of head and shoulders the best player, hasn't he, over the last number of weeks, certainly consistently. So you would like to see him in a consistent position, is what I would say. But I understand the need to move him, or the decision to move him, not the need, the decision to move him at the weekend. Did it pay off? Not really. Was it the reason we lost? Not really. There's more fundamental problems than and I get it's another thread for people to pull. You're right. I'd rather Jody play on that left hand side. I think where he's been fantastic, where he's had the beating of most opposition fullbacks all season, and where he can supply. And I'm sure Macaulay Langstaff and Jatta and Dan Crowley would prefer it as well, because on a left foot or on the left hand side, they're going to go on his left foot and whip the ball in rather than always cutting inside and looking to shoot, which frustrates the hell out of strikers, that's for sure. But I understand it. I understand the reasons it didn't work. So obviously you're then going to leave yourself open to get pelters. Was it the reason we lost? No, it wasn't. Like I say, look at both goals. Look at both goals for the reason we lost the game. I mean, and there were other chances. We didn't create enough really, and we like I say, we just don't defend as a team well enough, and we're too easy to score against. I don't think playing Jody on the left or the right affects that too much.
Interesting. Here's a stat you'd be proud of, Stell. Ian Cooksey, he sent it in twice. 442 goals in our last 129 games. The first thing you need to do, Ian, is get a life. Okay? With your little calculator and an abacus. 400, and I'll repeat it because you sent it in twice. 442 goals in our last 129 games. So I presume he means by that the last 3 seasons, nearest, damn it.
That's total goals, is it? Not goals scored.
Oh yeah, no, I think so. Yeah,
yeah.
So we're running at between 3 and 4 goals in every Notts County match. And I know, without advocating betting here, please bet responsibly. A few of my friends who have all the little online apps, one of their go-to bets is any game that's Notts is involved in on the goal spread for there to be more than 2.5 goals per game. And they put that bet on every game. And you can see why that's like that, can't you?
I was speaking to somebody before Saturday's game, and they were telling me they've got, obviously not Salford, to be both teams to score. And considering both teams had scored and conceded in the 70s, I said, you're not getting many odds on that. It must have been a 20-game accumulator maybe, but it's a fairly safe bet, isn't it, at the minute, that?
Yeah, Joe Crabtree, a lot of talk about a process-driven project. When the process leads to 8 defeats in 11, surely it needs refining. Zedo, difference is the work rate, movement when we don't have the ball. Last season, better than anyone. Recently, we stood watching. Recruitment had been poor in the last window, says Nick G. Now, here's a contentious stat. This one's from David Skinner. He's of a certain vintage like me. Mark Stallard scored 69 league goals for us. Macaulay Langstaff has scored 25 league goals. He has not scored more league goals than Stell, despite what Mr. Bracegirdle says. And bear in mind, Macca's dad is a regular listener.
Who's that? Sent in by Mr. Stallard? Is that? Cheers, Dad. Thank you.
David Skinner brackets Stell's dad.
Yeah. I'm fairly sure my dad don't listen to this. I know that for certain.
Oh dear me. Right, Gary Smith, does anyone actually know what Stuart Maynard's style philosophy is? Can't work it out, even if it is possession based. Just looks an uncoordinated mess to me. Ian G, Ashby Hammond's distribution is far better than Sam's, clear to see on Saturday. I thought this. Gary Phillips, we've got Will Randall as a right-sided player. Is he that out of form that we can't pick him? Ian G adds, we have Toby Adebayo rolling, right-sided as well. What else? Hang on, there's loads more coming in here. Let's pick up on, right. So when part of the reason, as was explained to us, and it sounded really good at the time, was that Stuart Maynard, that the brothers had watched his style of play. There was a, if you like, continuity candidate approach to this sort of thing. And yet, what sounds good on the old PowerPoint presentation, continuity candidate, similar style, that sort of thing. How would you explain, Stell, there has been such a remarkable, and I think it is remarkable, downturn in results? And I think I do detect that there is an overwhelming majority of fans right now that are very skeptical as to whether Stuart Maynard can turn this ship around, and indeed whether he should stay in post. Others who would subscribe to giving Stuart more time, initially produced these tangential statistics about, well, when Luke Williams played the same teams that that Stuart Maynard's played, we both got the same set of results. Well, clearly the last 2 or 3 results have meant that analogy doesn't work anymore. So on a results basis at this moment in time, Notts have got, I think I'm right in saying, 7 points from 12 games. Now, that's just over a quarter of a season. Now, if you extrapolate that out over the course of a season, that's 28 points in a season. And to avoid relegation out of League Two, you would normally need in the 40s. So on that metric, we are probably a million miles off it. Where does responsibility lie? Players, head coach? Have you been genuinely surprised in terms of results just how bad we have been? Because, as I said at the start of the programme, we all know the script. Even if we beat Swindon on Friday, and in a perverse way, I kind of think we've got a better chance of winning at Swindon than we have at home against MK Dons. There will be a narrative for the MK Dons game that if Notts were to lose again, it would be the worst ever home league run this club has had since they were founder members in 1888, which is not a stat you want on your CV. So what's your thoughts on it all?
Right. Well, not to be pedantic, it's 8 points from 12 games, isn't it? We've got
Sorry.
2 wins, 2 draws. But you're right; it doesn't affect the. It's still.
Yeah,
It's still.
so that
it's still,
I'll
it's
get
still
this right.
relegation
32
form.
points. 32
It's,
points. Yeah.
it's still relegation form. But where does the blame lie? Again, I come back. It's a shared collective of if we want to go down the blame route. It's responsibility rather than blame for me. I think it's whose responsibility is it? Everybody has to take their share of responsibility for it. So everybody will have a different opinion. 10,000 Notts fans, you could get 10,000 different opinions on who takes the lion's share of that. Now, let's go. Look, the elephant in the room, should Stuart Maynard still be in the job? You know, that's what basically everybody's mulling over, isn't it, at the minute? For me, I would say yes, he gets till the end of the season. I think now I would say, look, with the way it is, I don't think there's anything to be gained by changing him now. I've seen people say about we'll put Jim O'Brien in charge till the end of the season. Don't see as that gains us anything. I don't see as that actually gains anything at all other than a little bit more turmoil. But I like I say, I always say being a footballer or being in football, it's like an audition. Now, Stuart Maynard will have wanted to come in and wanted to turn things around immediately, and he'll believe he could have done that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have took the job. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to, and unfortunately, things have got worse, not better. But again, we're talking on a dozen games. It's not a lot of time for anybody. I know it's modern football. I know managers have gone on that and less games, but it's not a load of time. But the other side of the coin is, hold on a minute, you have been brought in. We need to see something. We need to see that you can motivate, that you can turn around. What has been happening and what is happening now. We need to see progress. We need to see something. And so for me, that's why I go, right, well, you're in position. We're not going to change that. It's not going to make any difference to the season now. Put Jim in charge or whatever now doesn't give us any chance of the playoffs. Or not. We're not going down. We're not going to go up. I think it's fairly safe to assume that. So, but what I would be, I don't want to be necessarily saying it, but in my mind's eye, I would be going, but we need to see something between now and the end of the season to say to us, you're the man to lead us into next season. You're the man to be the head coach for next season. And you know what? Although I would assume that there is a question mark. There may be the Reeks brothers, whoever actually appointed him, whoever the final committee that made the decision will go, this hasn't gone how we wanted to. We're not stupid. We're not naive. But we do need to see something before we go, we have actually, or we might have made a mistake here. Now, I hope, again, I said it a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I hope Stuart Maynard's still in post in 3 years' time at Notts. Because if he is, that means things have gone on an upward curve. Not just because, I think the owners are intelligent enough and the people are intelligent enough to know that to not be stubborn if they do believe, actually, I think we've made a mistake. So I don't think they would just stick with it, because, how football works. It turns nasty, it turns toxic, particularly nowadays. Social media, is what it is. But Stuart Maynard will know this as well. Stuart Maynard is not, oblivious to any of this. He will know. He will want to have come in and won all 12 games, of course. You win 2 and draw 2, you take 8 points out of 36 at a club that were looking at playoffs and in and around the playoffs, albeit they weren't banging form at the time. He will know that it's not good enough. And he will know that, crikey me, football managers, head coaches are under pressure and massively being scrutinised to see, all right, have we made a mistake, or are you the man that can do this? Can you do something about it? So, look, I know people will call for his head and want him gone, and you can understand that in the modern world. But I would say I don't see what's gained by getting him out now. I think you've got till the end of the season. We brought you in. We believed in you then. We believe in you now. We believe you can turn this round. But we need to see something. And that would be my mentality. Well, I wouldn't necessarily be saying this or having these conversations, putting it out in public. But for me, that's you've got to see something. You make a decision in life, you've got to see something. Otherwise, you go, do you know what? Was it what we make a bad decision? It happens all the time, doesn't it? Recruitment isn't perfect. Like I say, there are all these areas that you can go on to, but that's just Stuart Maynard. I would also say you've got to look at the players. What's happened in the players that are largely the same group of players that were top of the table at the start of the season for 3 months? Is it a mentality thing? I think it might be. Why can we win away from home? The 2 games we've won under Stuart Maynard away from home. Why can we win 2 games convincingly away from home at Newport and at Bradford? Why can we do that away from home, but with five defeats at home? And it's not 5 defeats to great teams either, truth be told. Is that mentality? Is it because, the atmosphere's got a little bit, I don't like it. There's 10,000 and they're not all singing my name and they're not all clapping and backing us. And, we know that they're a bit disappointed with everything. And have players then inwardly shrunk a little bit? You could argue that. I think that's as arguable as anything else. I say, I don't think the commitment is not there. I don't think the application isn't there, but certainly there's been a big drop-off in terms of the team's actual performance and the results, that follow with it. So you can't lay all that at Stuart Maynard's door because it was happening prior to that. But he's got to take his you're the head coach. Unfortunately, with responsibility comes great pressure. So, I wouldn't sack him at this person. I wouldn't sack him now. No, I would give him till the end of the season and then analyse things then. But as much as I'm a one for, and I said this last week, so sorry for repeating myself, but as much as I'm one for saying, look, he's not even had a transfer window. Give him a transfer window to bring his players in. But because of how not to do it, I don't think that is as applicable as it would be with a manager who gets to choose his own players. Now, that is, again, where you start looking at, hold on a minute, should we include the manager a little bit more? Should he have the final say in the recruitment? But again, that's more process, structure of the club. That's different to, has he come in as a head coach and can we see what value he's added? Well, at the minute, no. At the minute, we can't, obviously. But he's not daft. He will know that. Like I say, he will know that. But is it all his fault? No, it's not all his fault. Like I say, the players have to take collective responsibility. We talk about potentially going, the club never having been 6 games defeated at home, 6 consecutive games at home. If I'm a player and I'm playing with the potential of that hanging over me, I would be absolutely mortified to even get somewhere near that. And I might have played in a team that did 5. I don't know, but you as a player, that's your motivation as much as anything for the next home game. I'm getting ahead of Swindon, but that's there's a pride. There's a pride in your own performance, in your own. Come on, lad. We've got to. Watch my language, but we've got to book our ideas up or whatever. So there's an absolute determination, of pride, of grit, or whatever, to make sure that doesn't happen. Because as good as the positives that, and again, people taking personal criticism of Kyle Cameron or whoever it might be. Kyle Cameron's not the enemy. He's doing what he can do. Whether you deem that good enough or not good enough, he's doing what he can do. He's been part of a fantastic bit of Notts history, part of the team that gets Notts back into the Football League. So, let's not turn viciously. You can say, do you know what? I don't think he's been playing well enough. And you could say that, and I'm not just talking Kyle Cameron, you could say that to any player. That's fair game. That's fair criticism. I don't think you're playing well. Like I say, at what point do you talk about, and again, I'm not talking just Kyle Cameron here, at what point do you look at players and go, have we found the level of their ability? You can't fault players for not being good enough. You can fault them for not trying, not running around enough, not giving it their all, but not actually being good enough is not the player's fault. You could look at the coach. Can a coach do something about it? but also then that's where you come into recruitment and retaining of the players that were in the National League. Is it a step too far for some? Or, again, is there something else, that mentality, that sort of, we were top of the league and things were going well, we're all confident, that's great, but when I'm not so confident, I'm half the player that I was when I am confident. And everybody goes through that. Everyone with confidence, the game's easy. When the game becomes tough, then it's about your own mentality, your own self-belief, your own ability to get the best out of yourself, to be determined, to be dogged. And I've got I can excuse players for not being good enough. It happens. In my career, I went up to levels where I was found wanting. I just didn't have what was needed. For all the trying in the world, you can't be better than you are. And I love to have played like Messi.
How did that affect you, Stel? Was there a point in your career where you're at a level and you think, I'm not quite sure I'm good enough? How did that affect you? Did fans give you stick? Did you think, do I need to move? I'll keep trying my best. Is it just not working for me? How does it affect you?
I just say it probably didn't. It's probably after the event. I'm probably looking. Obviously, the age I am now, I can look back on my career and obviously I've done it. And you sort of retrospectively look at things. At the time, I can't ever remember thinking I'm not good enough for this level. But you look back and go, well, the goals I scored or didn't score obviously showed I wasn't good enough for that level. I wasn't, I wasn't at that level. But I can't remember. I can't ever believe I ever went into a game or was ever in a period of my game where I thought I'm not good enough for that. That doesn't happen, I don't think. So all the players will think that, all the players will accept or think they're good enough and believe they're good enough and genuinely believe it, not kid themselves that they're good enough for League Two. And like you've said about Jayden Warner, I thought you made a good point. Jayden Warner, we were speaking off air about Jayden Warner and saying he looks like a player that individually might go on and have a really good career, might go on and do things you don't know, but he isn't the answer for what not's needed. He's not turned out to be the answer for what not's needed. And then that's where you can take the individuals out of a team and they can look different with different players around them. Again, I'm back to my jigsaw analogy. Every player is a jigsaw piece, and it's whether the pieces fit together. And I think, like I say, a lot of Notts team and squad defensively, out of possession of the ball, they haven't fit together very well. And again, to get onto the more basic point of view, you look at the goals from Saturday and go, crikey me, you have a look at, it's a coach's dream. You could stop and analyse that going, right, what's gone wrong here? Who's track runners? There's mistake after mistake. But, they're big things in games, but they're tiny little things that go on all the time, decision making and positional sense and reading of the game as well. Very difficult to produce a stat for it. Very difficult to analyse statistically, all them sort of things. But look, again, I'm waffling on now, but it's a conundrum. The blame is apportioned collectively, but it's where you think the majority of the blame lies. But I think everyone's got to step up. Everyone took their share of praise and accolades for getting promoted last season, and nobody was shying away from that, and rightly so. So when it goes badly, or when it's going the other way, again, as we say, never too high, never too low. All them sayings come out, but it is absolutely right, because you have to treat. Treat them adversities in the same way.
Imposter, Kipling, and all of that. Yeah,
all that sort of
stuff.
Yeah.
I've used it before, but I can't remember what it is now.
Exactly. So, but that's the thing. There is blame. There is blame. It's not blame. It's responsibility. Again, blame is like pointing at it's you. Responsibility, and the responsibility is a collective thing that the club have to sort out, and that is what is going to make such a big summer for us.
Here. Eddie Clark, most of our attackers will get in any of the top 7 teams, but doubt any of our defensive players would. Custom casuals, it's very hard to have faith in a manager who never seems to watch the same game as fans. Duncan Comrie, could it be the brothers are quite content with another season or two in League Two to allow the club's income to catch up and keep the club sustainable? Don't set me off on the sustainable, Duncan. Notts will lose between £1 and £2.5 million this year. Do not forget, the brothers probably cost them 13 to 14 million pounds so far, including the purchase of the club, including getting the club through COVID. You know, you'll be budgeting roughly £2 million a year. When we had the brothers on the show last year, I think it was Christopher who said that until such point the club was in League One, you couldn't really realistically be looking at a break-even scenario. We have, by the way, got Joe Palmer coming on the show in the near future. Spoke with Nick at the club. Been waiting for a little while now, but Joe will be coming on. I'm hoping the next 2 to 3 weeks. I'm sure you'll have plenty of questions that I can ask on your behalf. And while we're on the subject of that, I would say well done to Les Brad and to the club for their support with the former players coming back. They came back on, I think it was either Thursday or Friday afternoon. Players, you know, spanning several generations: Don Masson and Bob Worthington and Brian Stubbs. John Barnwell, who looks healthier than I do, and he's in his upper 80s. Probably not that difficult, to be fair. He's got a lot more hair than me, by the way, John has. And, you know, a club's initiative to get players together. Dave Watson, you need to be older than me to remember watching him play for Notts first time around. One or two of our older players have been experiencing challenges with Alzheimer's and dementia. And part of getting former players together at various clubs helps memory jog and bring back those kind of longer term memories. And Les has been doing that. An idea originally from John Brecken at Rotherham. And that was the first meeting the club had, got them all together on last week. And it went very well, I am told. So well done to the club. Well done to Les for getting so many of those former players together. A few more comments, and we'll talk a little bit about going back to Swindon. You could always tell what the plan was with Luke Williams, whether it worked or not, says Gary Phillips. It's clearly a results business, says Martin Blaney, and that is not happening. Notts look boring and not as exciting as they were. Wooljam says the big difference is that Luke had experience of coaching championship players before he joined Notts, so had a higher ceiling. Stuart may be a good coach, but our players are the upper level that he has coached previously. 2-11, not good enough, says John Parr. Gary Phillips, a new manager would benefit from seeing what he has got now, not at the start of next season. Jurgen Halligan, Warnock came from non-league to Notts. He did, Jurgen. He'd also won a few things. I think he got Scarborough into the Football League, I think. And he was also a Football League player. Did about 400 appearances, Chesterfield, Rotherham, a few others. Flying winger, I believe. Chris Gossing, we did nothing in January to strengthen us for the second half of the season. If Maynard goes, questions also need to be asked of those above him. Otherwise, I don't see what will change with a new boss. A new manager coming in before the end of the season would be hugely beneficial for season tickets, says Custom Casuals. Robert Minister, I agree with Stell. My concern is that the new head coach doesn't have the defensive cattle. I think he must mean something else. Defensive know-how, and that in fairness, he should have an off-season to be able to lead us into next season. But is he the right man to lead us? Ian Cooksey, a big factor if Stuart Maynard goes is what type of manager would we go for? as proven managers, don't seem to be have the choice of manager the owners prefer a young and upcoming coach. I think that's also in a very valid point, and one that we should consider. I've gone on record in the past not spoil fish in a different pond for head coaches to most other clubs. And I think your point, Stel, and your suggestion, we're going to do kind of a special show at some point between now and the end of the season, purely on recruitment. And I think it would be interesting as well as players to discuss recruitment of head coach and manager and how that fits into the model. My understanding would be if you look at the top 6 this year and their managers, I do not think that any of those top 6 club managers would come to Notts, and I don't think the owners would want to recruit any of those top 6, because the model that we have in terms of input of the head coach into signing players is probably a very different scenario to those 6, the current top 6 head coaches stroke managers. We know that Mike Williamson turned down Notts when he was a Gateshead because he had a different approach to bringing in players than the one the owners wanted. So I think that's kind of an interesting point. So I do believe that whoever we would go for, unless of course those metrics change, I think we're going to look at a slightly left field head coach role. And that's maybe another thing that the club do or don't need to look at. Right, a few more there. Okay. Swindon, Stel. In a perverse way, I'm looking forward to Swindon to go back, because the last time I was there, it was probably
horrible.
one of the lowest spots. And I'm 60, and my dad took me before I was born. I can't ever remember a more depressing spectacle, if I'm honest. And I know the Notts fans were brilliant, and the chanting midway through the second half. But for me, that felt so hollow, so. I don't know. For me, it was a waste of time. It was a waste of space. We're going out of the league. There's nothing to be proud about. There's nothing to celebrate. There's nothing. I just felt really empty and just bereft, really. So I'm looking forward now to going back there on Friday for the first time since it's nearly 5 years on, knowing that after that game we will still be a league club. And you know what? Jim O'Brien's obviously still there. It'd be nice to stick one over on them as well, and their fans, they were giving it large. And to be fair, we would probably do the same in a not dissimilar position. And I remember Charlie Slater in the book that I did said how the Swindon fans, I think, were giving you guys loads of stick into the commentary box. It was just a horrible, 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 empty day. Your memories?
Yeah, well, I'd say horrible. Surreal almost, in the worst possible way. Yeah. It was a day you couldn't, as bad as that season was, and as imminent as relegation was sort of looming on the horizon, sort of for large parts of it, it was almost like, whatever the opposite waiting for Christmas is. You knew it could happen, but you sort of in the back of your head always thought, it's not, it can't go out of the league. It's never happened before. It's not going to happen. Something's going to change. And you even went into that day thinking, we scored the first goal, didn't we? And you think, we're still going to get out of it. It's still going to go out. There's still going to be a rescue mission.
Did you? I never did. Even when we went, I never thought we'd do it. I was just so pessimistic and so down about it all.
No, I'm not saying with any expectation, but you just almost the surrealism of the reality of not dropping into non-league football. You couldn't process. I couldn't process really that. Ridiculous, sounds ridiculous now, but when you look back at it, the feeling of it was, like say the Swindon fans were sort of looking around, goading and chanting and whatever. Say Notts fans were brilliant, but it's just a horrible, empty. just a real kick in the proverbials. The empty feeling it was yeah, unbelievable feeling, but not in a good way. Just the worst possible.
It's Easter. Easter's often like a sorting out period, isn't it, for clubs? And then, look, it's not going to be a sorting out period, but I can't help but think that game on Monday against MK Dons, given they will clearly be all at it for the points in their position, I think that's an afternoon where you can see two massive poles apart scenarios. You get the home win. What a relief for Stuart. He's had a few goes at trying to get a win, and he gets the first win at home, and there will be an outpouring, there'll be a release. Conversely, God forbid, were you to lose that one, I'm not advocating this, but there's an inevitability in football with supporters. There gets to a point where, hang on, we're going to let the steam off now. That's it. We're going to blow, and I can't help but think Monday afternoon could be a bit edgy if we go behind.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, that's you're right. I'm not advocating that. I wouldn't want that at all. And
no, but we know football enough to know, Stell,
but that's reality.
The players haven't, the fans haven't turned yet. I don't think there's a lot of support for Stuart, given the current run of results. But you can't keep losing at home. You can't. You can't do it.
Absolutely. That's the reality. That unfortunately that is the reality, and certainly it probably always has been. But again, now modern day more than anything else, you fear the reaction when things go bad, and 6 consecutive home defeats, a club record, an unwanted record. People will see that as a line being crossed almost, won't they? So you do fear for it, and again, that's where I would then look. That is a challenge for the players, for everybody. Pulling tight, galvanise yourself. Look. Don't shy away from it. Don't pretend. Don't stick your head in the sand. Look, this is what's happening. They'll know it, but this is what's happening now. Come on, everybody, give everything you've got, and if you don't, we're on to each other, because we cannot get beat today. In fact, we're going to go and win the game. But just look, it goes without saying that the players will absolutely be determined not to have that on their CV, just as the head coach won't. But you're right. You're right. You can't stop people's reactions. I say people pay the money; they can react however they want. As long as, again, I would never back anybody with any personal, sort of stuff. But I think if you want to boo, if you want to do that, that's your right. You paid your money. But say it doesn't help the team. Do it knowing it's not helping your team or your club, but it is letting your feelings known. So that is the world. We can say it shouldn't happen, or it should happen, or they're entitled. It doesn't matter. It will happen regardless. So you prepare yourself for it. Prepare yourself for it. And like I say, the only people that can do anything about it are the players and the coach. They can do something about it by going out and performing. Are they capable of doing it? Absolutely. Does that mean they will be able to do it? We don't know. We'll wait and see.
As a player, Stel, do you think that the players might also be a little more comfortable playing away than at home at the minute?
Yep, I think there's evidence for that, isn't there? Like we said, two good away wins, convincing away wins. It is sometimes, it can sometimes be easier, depending on your mentality. If you want to get out the pressure cooker of a home game where your expectations are higher, then it can be easier to go and play away. That's always been said in football. Again, the stronger mentality teams don't get affected too much by that. They back themselves, they'll back their own ability. But there's certainly evidence for that. Yeah, absolutely. I think you would argue that the best performances under Stuart Maynard have all been away from home.
Yeah.
So even games we've lost, even Wrexham away, there was a decent performance, a real good performance. Just the wrong end of the result. But there's not been too much to shout about at home, certainly.
Okay, well, we're trying to get positives tonight, but clearly it's not it's
Well,
not massively easy. But don't ask me why. I just think a bit of karma, things might turn around at Swindon. If I'm honest, I'm not massively optimistic about MK Dons, but I just think maybe a bit of karma, Swindon, and coming back on the train in a much better mood than we all were the best part of 5 years ago. I think that'll about wrap it up for tonight. There won't be a show next Monday because clearly it's MK Dons on the Monday, so we'll probably be looking at Tuesday. But Stel, thank you as always for your insight, your time, and your valuable input this evening.
Pleasure, no problem. Like I say, there is positivity out there. It's just hiding.
Look, we all know, don't we? You gave me pelters. Get a result at Bradford. We did. Everyone, the mood on Wednesday, fantastic. But equally, it dissipated very quickly as a result of Saturday. Look, let's hope we can get another win on the road. Stel, safe travels. Everyone that's going, I don't know if it's still called the County Ground. It is to me on Friday. I think we've got a best part of about 1,000 going, so should be plenty of us there. Thank you very much for tuning in this evening. Well over 500 listening to Stel's Pearls of Wisdom. It'd probably been 700 if you not had to put up with me as well. But thank you again, and we look forward to catching up with you soon. Cheers for now.
Cheers.